It is 0:30 Universal Time. I'm Steve Ember in Washington. A United Nations special diplomat has criticized Israel's raid into the Bekaa Valley and its continuing blockage of Lebanon. Terje Rød Larsen says the ceasefire is weak and can easily change to violence. Mr. Rød Larsen spoke in Beirut. He planned to travel to Israel later. Israel says its raid into eastern Lebanon was a defensive move aimed at stopping Hezbollah from rearming. Israel denies violating the ceasefire. UN Secretary-General Kofi Annan does not agree. He said the action threatens the calm in the area and damages Lebanese power. Earlier, Lebanon's defense minister said anyone firing rockets into Israel will be considered treasonous. Elias Murr said such an attack would be giving Israel a reason to strike Lebanon. Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert says countries without diplomatic relations with Israel should not take part in the United Nations peacekeeping force for Lebanon. Those countries include 3 Muslim nations that have already offered to send troops. They are Bangladesh, Indonesia, and Malaysia. Mr. Olmert says Italy may be ready to take an important part in the peacekeeping force. He made the statement after speaking with Italian Prime Minister Romano Prodi on the telephone. Italy has already approved plans to send as many as 3,000 troops to Lebanon, but it is not clear if it will lead the force. The UN plans to add up to 15,000 soldiers to a peacekeeping force already in Lebanon. Iraqi officials say gunmen have killed at least 20 Shiite Muslims as they gathered for a major religious event in Baghdad. Officials say more than 300 people were wounded in the attack. Hundreds of thousands of Shiites were marching to a holy place in the Kazemiya area at the time. The officials say police have captured at least 4 gunmen. The religious event concerns the death of Imam Musa Kadim 1,200 years ago. He is buried in Kazemiya. Iraqi officials banned vehicles from the streets until after the march ends to try to stop Sunnis from targeting Shiites with bombs placed in cars. The second trial of former Iraqi President Saddam Hussein begins Monday in Baghdad. He and 6 other people are to face charges of murder and war crimes against Iraqi Kurds 20 years ago. About 100,000 Kurds were killed by Iraqi forces in 1987 and 88. Survivors say Iraqi forces used chemical weapons in the offensive. Another court in Baghdad is expected to announce its ruling in the first trial of Saddam Hussein on October 16th. In that case, the former Iraqi leader is accused of ordering the killings of almost 150 people. The victims were killed following a murder attempt against Saddam Hussein in the village of Dujail. You are listening to the news in VOA Special English. Officials in Afghanistan say NATO and Afghan forces have killed at least 71 Taliban fighters in a battle in Kandahar. A police chief in the southern province says 4 policemen and 1 Afghan soldier were also killed in the clash. He says the fighting began when hundreds of Taliban raided a town in the area of Panjwai Saturday night. Also, the British Defence Ministry says a British soldier was killed and 3 others wounded during a clash in the Afghan province of Helmand. Democratic Republic of Congo President Joseph Kabila has won the presidential election, but not by a majority. The election committee chief announced the final results that give Mr. Kabila just under 45% of the vote. Former rebel leader Jean-Pierre Bemba was second with about 20% of the vote. The 2 men will compete against each other in another election in October. The election results remain unofficial until Congo's Supreme Court approves them. The Israeli army has arrested another top official of the Palestinian governing party, Hamas. Reports say Israeli forces seized Mahmoud al-Ramahi in the West Bank. He is the secretary of the Palestinian parliament. On Saturday, Israeli forces arrested Palestinian Deputy Prime Minister Nasser al-Shayr at his home in the West Bank. An Israeli official said Mr. Shayr was seized because he is a member of Hamas. Israel considers Hamas a terrorist group. The Sri Lankan military reports new exchanges of gunfire with Tamil Tiger rebels trying to capture Jaffna town and the northern Jaffna area. A Defense Ministry spokesman said the rebels began an offensive 9 days ago in an attempt to recapture the Tamil majority area they lost in 1995. He said the military has successfully resisted their efforts. Hundreds of government troops, rebels, and civilians have been killed in the latest fighting. The military also says more than 80 rebels were killed since Friday. The United Nations has appealed to both sides to permit aid workers to take supplies to the area. The UN says refugees trapped by the fighting are short of food and water. And officials in Thailand have sent American John Mark Carr to the United States for questioning about the death of JonBenet Ramsey. Thai officials say Carr and American officials flew from Bangkok to Los Angeles, California. Carr faces charges of murder, kidnapping, and child sexual attack in connection with JonBenet's murder in 1996. He was arrested in Thailand on Wednesday. Carr says he was with the 6-year-old girl when she died in her family's home in Boulder, Colorado in 1996. He says her death was an accident. Carr's former wife says he was with her in another area of the United States when the child was killed. Briefly, here again is the major news of the hour. A United Nations special diplomat has criticized Israel's recent actions in Lebanon. Iraqi officials say gunmen have killed at least 20 Shiite Muslims as they gathered for a religious event in Baghdad. And officials in Afghanistan say NATO and Afghan forces have killed at least 71 Taliban fighters in a battle in Kandahar. That's the news in VOA Special English. Steve Ember reporting.